I have a little helper today. They're tight in here, but let's push this back just in case. Okay, so I just wanted to take a couple of shots of how you can split seedlings after you've grown multiple ones in the same pots. Don't pull the plants, buddy. Here, stay here. That's too close. Okay. Whenever I have plants or seedlings that didn't make it or whatnot, or I repot stuff, I usually take all that potting mix and I put it all in a bucket, and then I try to amend it with worm castings. So I'll amend it with worm castings, and then I use that mix for transplanting. I don't use it for seed starting because there's still the chance that there could be seedlings, ungerminated seedlings in it, and I always want to avoid the possibility of having a seedling that's not the variety that I actually wanted to grow. So I only use it for transplant. So here I'm just gonna, I'm gonna repot some of these tomatoes. For tomatoes, I'll use these larger plugs, just because, you know, they need room to grow. Some of these have already grown quite a bit. So let's take a look at these. These are Jersey Giants. So in some cases, you know, there's two ways you can go, right? So you can either split some plants. Let's see, these ones might be okay to split. Or when you're double potting or multi-potting or whatnot, you can simply just pick the strongest plant. And so if you have multiple plants growing in the same plug, and you can see with, you know, obviously that one is way more vigorous than the other, then you can just choose to keep the strongest one and kill the other one. And that way you're also always selecting for a stronger genes or a more vigorous plant. Now in this case, these two, they're so easy to separate. I didn't even break any roots here. They just literally came apart. So right now I just have two perfectly good plants. These both look pretty vigorous. They have their second set of leaves. So all I'm gonna do is I just fill this about halfway through. I'm just gonna pack it down just a little bit. Seed this in there. Okay, I'll just seed it in there and just kind of sprinkle this around. And again, with tomatoes, you can, it doesn't matter how deep you plant the stem, because any part of the stem that's covered will grow roots. So it's okay to plant them deeper. In fact, it'll encourage more root growth. I'm just gonna get it nice and snug. And that's basically how you repot a tomato. That's how easy it can be to split some of these. Now if you have many plants, like way more than two, like if you have 4 or 5, then it becomes a mess of tangled roots. It can be harder unless you do it really early on, but in this case, okay, so these ones came out of there pretty loose. Same thing. Pack this down. Putting it in. No. Don't eat that. No. That's a shovel. You can't put that in your mouth. Let me get you a leaf of lettuce. How about that? You can eat a leaf of lettuce. There. Growing fresh. We'll give him one of these. Let's see if he eats it. Here you go. There. Have at it. When you transplant or pot plants like this, like really up on the stem, you give them a little more sturdiness. They become a little sturdier. They kind of gain a little girth in their stem, and they grow. It helps them grow more, have a better sustained stem. Now this here, so see these two tomatoes right here. I really don't like the way this one looks. This one looks very weak compared to this one. I am not going to transplant this. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to just pull that out, trash it, okay? And that's going to hopefully give these others, give this one, it'll give us this one more room to grow with roots. So you can keep them in these, the smaller plug size, it's fine. If you up pot them, of course they'll have more room to grow, and you'll probably get a little more growth out of them. So it's okay. What you don't want is you don't want this to become a really bigger, a much bigger plant than this and get too leggy. So I'll see. Oi. I guess you didn't like that, huh? You don't you don't like the lettuce? So I'm gonna leave these in here for another week or two and see how the weather does, and because I was hoping to test and do some planting at the end of February, but if I determine that it's not, you know, it's really not gonna happen, I'm gonna go ahead and just repot them and pot them up. So this boy is enjoying some lettuce. Even though he gagged a couple of times. Like normally if I'm just up potting, I would wait a little longer to do it. But for splitting the plants, you want them to be young. So in this case, since I'm doing it, I'm just transplanting everything. But if you're just up potting a single plant, you want to wait until it's a little stronger than this. This is still a little small for it. But... Hi. Okay, I think you... Okay. That's not good. Okay, we had an accident. Let's go inside. Let's go get you changed. Put this in the compost. I guess that wasn't such a good idea. Okay, the baby has moved on. Made a mess. Okay. The Costco mild jalapeno. Yeah, these split so easily, so it'd be a shame not to separate it. Okay. So I can just put this here. This is the State Fair pepper right there. You can do this with pretty much any plant. I did it yesterday with some of these Chinese cabbages. I had one, it was one 6-pack, and I split it up into 3 separate ones. These ones I off-potted into one of the bigger 6-packs. Just letting them get rained on for a few seconds. Let nature water the seedlings. The tomatoes and the peppers, and I'm going to plant a few more tomatoes and peppers today. So yeah, it's good to, you can continue to start seeds all the way up until for summer plantings like tomatoes, etc., all the way up until late March or April really, and then you just can't have a, you'll have a staggered set of seedlings at different stages that you can plant and continue to plant. And I'm always starting seeds of whatever varieties. These are some calabrese broccoli. I'm just gonna split these up. So anyway, I put a little bit in there, pack it down a little. So I mean, at this stage they're not, you know, they're small, so they should be pretty easy to split, you know. So like here's one. This is the other one. Maybe some of this I'll throw back because it's too much. Kind of want to cover, I try to cover the roots as soon as possible, just because the longer they're exposed, the more they'll dry out. That could really hurt the plant. Okay, here's some lettuce. This is the Lola Rosa. It's the same one that I had in the video. My recent video where I harvested lettuce. Okay, another way you can do it. So here you can see this one was newer seed, last year's seed, and I planted 3 in each. And you can see, which I usually do for lettuce seed, for newer seed, but you can see a lot of them, all 3 sprouted. Some of them only 2, this one only 2, that one only 2, this one 1, and it looks like this other one's coming up now. That's why you don't want to plant just one, because when you plant a single seed, there's a chance that you might get a dead cell. So I would say the minimum is 2, and then you can always pluck out one that you don't want. So in this case, since I'm going to plant a decent amount more lettuce, I'm just going to go ahead and split these, but you could also just pinch off the weaker seedlings and just select for the strongest ones. Or for example, this is where you could do selection for traits, right? So this one, look at this seedlings, is very deep red. These ones are lighter, but they'll get darker. So that's interesting, right? You could take notes on how seedlings, you know, the life of the plant from a seedling all the way up to what it demonstrates in genetic form once it's an adult. And just kind of, then you could decide, for example, I really like this plant, what this produces, the way it looks, I'm going to try to save seeds from it, right? That kind of thing. So you could start doing selective breeding of certain plants. And that way, that's also, you know, good way to, you always save seeds from the best plants, the plants that grow best in your yard. And that's how you always select for the plants that will do the best in your soil. Because these are so young, I'm just gonna pull it out like that. So, can Papa give you something else? How about this? Okay, but you can't eat this one, okay? Don't eat this. Yeah, you can play with it, but don't eat it. If I see you eat that, I'm gonna take it away. Okay, battery died during that one. Didn't realize until I was done. But anyway, here we go. Let's start a new one. So, pull these out. Split them up. At this stage, they're super tiny. There's a very small root, which is like really nice. Makes it a lot easier. Somewhat small. And then you basically, I usually use a pencil. You can have, because I like it because I have a blunt side and a sharp side. So maybe make a little divot and then just start pushing the root. Try to push the root a little bit deep if you can, but it doesn't have to go too deep. But the lower you plant it, that's a good thing to plant it low, because it allows it to give, it allows the plant to grow stockier and stronger. So once I get that root in, I'm gonna push it in, pack in that soil, but then I'm going to be adding more soil here, right? So let me do the same here, put that in. When it's nice and fluffy, it's easy to push this root down, just like that, right? There, packing it in. And then basically, you can just add some soil, kind of all around. Give it that nice support. Yeah. So if you don't pack the soil in, if you leave the soil too loose, what that happens is you get too many air pockets in there, and there's not enough strength to the plug for when you pull it out, it'll kind of fall apart, you know, as opposed to if you do it like this, number one, you have more substrate in there for the roots to take a hold of and to benefit from, right, any nutrients that are in the substrate. So by packing it in, you put, you know, at least 1.5 times or maybe double what you would have put, what would have been there by not doing it. And the roots will spread through it and make a nice plug. Now, of course, you know, the question, oh, look at that, that's a little earthworm. I'll leave him in there. He can live in there. Okay, you ate some dirt, that's fine. Okay. The question is, you know, transplanting is always, I mean, plants are resilient, so as you're doing that, you know, sometimes you could break the root, part of the root, but it's okay, the plant will bounce back. Yeah, so, I mean, why transplant, right? It's, you know, of course, plants would rather, the best thing for the plant is for it to grow in the same spot where the seed sprouted, where the seed germinated. So the best thing would be to plant them directly in the garden where it's going to grow. The problem with that is, number one, you don't know that every seed is going to germinate, right? So then that would always require thinning, or in most cases. And two, you're bound by the weather, right? So if I want to start seeds way ahead of time, let's say a month before I know I'm going to plant them, or 6 weeks or 8 weeks before, I can't do that. Let's say it's crazy weather outside, nothing's really going to germinate, it's too cold, whatever that is, I'm not going to be able to plant those seeds. I'm going to pull this one out because I think I may have broken part of the stem. So anyway, yeah, so that's the benefit of course, that's a benefit of starting seeds and then transplanting when the time is right, when the weather's good and the plant is already well established. So in the end, I've never done a test of how much better would a plant grow. Maybe that's something for the future, like by just putting the seed in the ground and then starting the same plant at the same time. So despite the weather, maybe that's a test that I can do in the future. So, because of course planting in the ground is just less work, right? You don't have to do all this. You don't have to do this step. You can bypass, even purchasing the potting soil, all of it. Now this is more tomatoes, subarctic plenty. So for tomatoes, I try to use the bigger pots because they're probably they're probably gonna run out of room, so they need a little bit more room, because they need the weather to be warm before I can bring them out, as opposed to like lettuce and other stuff like cabbages and brassicas and all that stuff. So if I see a plant that's a lot weaker, then I might not use it. So this one, for example, not too hot, but so I'm gonna leave it aside for now. And let's see. So these ones, you can see there were 4 seeds in here. The reason I put 4 is because these seeds were older. So I'm gonna keep that, and these ones I pretty much just killed. So don't do it like that. And this one might be okay. But I will put it back in here. So I didn't separate the plug really well from the bottom. I think next time I'm just gonna plant tomatoes straight into the bigger plugs and just not separate them. The next batch I do, I might just selectively just pinch out the weaker plants. The alternative to splitting tomatoes, or plants in general, is that you can multi-sow and then just remove the plants and leave just the strongest ones. So that's also a good way to select for the better traits. So these are Kumato tomatoes, but these are actually, so I save seeds. The Kumato tomato is, I don't know if you've ever had it. You can buy it at the grocery store. It's a very dark, like almost chocolate colored, medium-sized tomato. It's delicious. It's very sweet, but it's a hybrid. So I wanted to try saving the seed and just to see what I get. I read some speculation on the internet a while back, years ago, when I saved these seeds, talking about that it may not be a hybrid. They're just saying it is, just to avoid. I'm sure it's probably a hybrid. Just because the reason I say that already is because when I planted these seeds, you can tell that this tomato, this has a green stalk, these have darker stalk. I see genetic diversity among the stalks. Not that necessarily means that they won't all grow similarly, but it just usually that's an indication that they're not all growing and looking similar to each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the strongest plants. I'm not going to bother splitting them, so all I'm going to do is just cut off. So this one obviously is the stronger one here, and maybe hopefully get a kind of a mix of traits. I'll try this one with the darker stalk. I'll try some of the ones with the green stalk. And of course I don't have that much space. It's not like I could grow all these, but this is just two. So let's see here. I'll probably select this dark one. Okay, and then for this one I will select the green one since that's the biggest one so far. And here the green one as well. I know it's sad doing this, but you know, when you have an excess of seeds, which is what you should always have. So yeah, that I try not to do it with purchased seeds, right? So purchased seeds I paid money for, there's usually just a few available. I always feel bad about doing it. But when I save seeds from a tomato or any plant, I usually have in excess. I have more than I can use, so I don't feel as bad. Okay, this one looks a little strange, so I'm gonna leave that bigger one right here. Okay, and this one I'll just leave that one because it's standing upright better. This one's all crooked. Okay, all right, that's it. So that's basically what you can do. You could try to pull them out if they're really young, but it's just you run the risk of disturbing the roots of the other plant. So this is black cherry. These are heirloom. And see what I was trying to say. It doesn't necessarily mean that. So these are all the same plant, but you can see that these are growing differently slightly than this, but they'll still all give black cherries. So it doesn't necessarily mean there's like full differentiation genetically. Okay, this one looks more straight. I'm just kind of picking the ones that look better. This one. These are my these are the ones that I up-potted, the subarctic plenty, which are supposed to be cold tolerant or more cold tolerant than others. Up-potting does make a difference. These are ones that I, at the same time as these, I just repotted in the same size pot. So one thing you can do with tomato, especially if you have good seed, is, which I try to do when I do have fresh seed that I've saved, then I will go for just straight into these bigger containers, just because I don't feel like I have to do as much selection. But you know, it's a trade-off. If you do it in a small one like this, you can do exactly that, what I just mentioned. You can take them and split them up, and then if you just do all of them, you could do a bunch of them in the same bigger container, so you don't have to up-pot anything, and then you just select the best ones, just like we just did. So yeah.